Hey everyone, and welcome back to Coffeesodes. This is our 30th episode.
Wow.
Can you believe it?
Hey, everyone.
So today we're diving into the fascinating world of collective decision-making. You can find more information about the research we'll be discussing in the episode description. You know, that whole wisdom the crowd idea? It always seems like having more brains working on a problem would lead to better decisions.
Right.
But new research suggests that it might not be so straightforward.
Yeah, we're going to be looking at a study that suggests focusing on the long-term benefits of being part of a group can actually make you a less accurate decision maker in the short term.
Okay. I'm intrigued. So how does this research challenge the traditional wisdom of the crowd concept? We're always told that groups are better at problem solving because they bring diverse perspectives and knowledge to the table.
Well, think about it this way. Imagine you're at a company meeting and a new marketing strategy is being proposed. Everyone seems to be on board, but you've done some research and you have some serious doubts. However, speaking up and potentially rocking the boat could put your standing in the team at risk.
That's a really relatable scenario. We've all been there at some point.
Yeah.
So are you saying that the desire to fit in and maintain our position within a group can actually lead us to make bad decisions?
Well, this new research by Richard P. Mann from the University of Leeds suggests exactly that. He found that when individuals prioritize long-term access to the benefits of being part of a group, they tend to conform to the group's decisions even when they have private information that suggests a different course of action.
So even if I have a hunch that the group is heading in the wrong direction, I might just go along with it because I don't want to risk being the odd one out.
Exactly, and what's really interesting is that the study found that this behavior is actually rational. The individuals in this model aren't acting out of fear or emotion, but they are making calculated decisions based on what will maximize their rewards over time.
So it's almost like a cost-benefit analysis, where group membership itself is a valuable asset.
Precisely. The study uses a model where a group of agents repeatedly choose between two options, but only one option leads to a reward. Each agent receives a private signal about the correct option, but this signal is noisy or unclear.
So they have a clue, but it's not a sure thing, kind of like trying to figure out what a song is based on a few muffled notes.
Exactly. Now, the key factor here is what the researchers call future weighting, represented by the Greek letter gamma. This basically reflects how much an agent values future rewards compared to immediate ones. A high gamma means they're in it for the long haul and prioritize those long-term gains.
So someone with high future weighting is thinking about all the future decisions they'll be making as part of this group and how valuable that group membership will be in the long run.
Yes, and the study found that agents who expect to make more decisions within the group, those with high future weighting, are much more likely to go along with the group's decisions, even if their own private information suggests a different answer. Essentially, they're willing to sacrifice some accuracy in the short term to maintain their access to the group's collective wisdom in the future.
But wouldn't that create a situation where groups become too homogenous in their thinking? If everyone is so focused on conforming, how do new ideas or challenges to the status quo ever emerge?
That's a great question. And it leads us to one of the most fascinating findings of this study. It turns out that situations where there are small majorities, or where the last decision maker goes against the majority, might actually be more reliable indicators of the correct choice.
Wait, so disagreement could actually be a good sign?
Exactly. Think about it. If someone is willing to dissent, especially if they're going against a strong majority, it suggests they have very compelling private information that outweighs their desire to conform.
That's a really interesting perspective. It challenges the idea that consensus is always the best outcome. So how does this play out in real-world scenarios? We've been talking about theoretical agents, but I'm curious to see how this research applies to human behavior.
Well, that's what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Coffeesodes. Before we went to the break, we were talking about how valuing long-term access to a group's benefits can sometimes lead to less accurate decisions in the short term.
It's almost like we're prioritizing our membership in the group over making the best possible decision.
Yeah, it's a trade-off, as we discussed. And this research, while it focuses on animal groups, Has some really interesting implications for understanding human behavior.
Absolutely. I'm thinking about all the different contexts where we make decisions as part of a group, from our workplaces to our social circles, even online communities.
Exactly. Take the workplace, for example. Think about how many decisions are made in meetings or team discussions, where there's a strong emphasis on consensus and presenting a united front.
Oh, for sure. No one wants to be the one who throws a wrench in the works, especially if you're concerned about your standing in the team or with your boss.
Right. And in those kinds of environments, it's easy to see how dissenting opinions, even if they're based on valid concerns or data, might get overlooked in favor of maintaining that smooth decision-making process.
But wouldn't that potentially lead to bad decisions? If everyone's so focused on not rocking the boat, critical information could get lost in the shuffle.
That's the danger. And this research highlights the importance of creating a culture where people feel comfortable speaking up and challenging the status quo, even if it means disagreeing with the majority.
So it's about encouraging healthy debate and making sure that diverse perspectives are actually heard, not just tolerated.
Precisely. And this applies to so many different areas of life. Think about social media, for instance. A lot of our online interactions are driven by the desire to belong, to be part of a community, to avoid being unfriended or criticized.
Absolutely. Social media often feels like a popularity contest, where fitting in and getting likes is the ultimate goal.
Right, and that desire for acceptance can have a big impact on the information we're exposed to and the opinions we form. If we surround ourselves only with people who agree with us, we create these echo chambers where dissenting opinions are rarely encountered.
So we end up reinforcing our own biases, potentially missing out on valuable insights that challenge our perspective. It's like we're trading intellectual honesty for a sense of belonging.
Exactly. And this research reminds us that we need to be more mindful of how social pressures can shape our behavior and limit our exposure to diverse perspectives, especially online.
So how do we break free from these echo chambers and engage in more meaningful conversations where different viewpoints are actually welcomed and considered? That seems like a pretty big challenge, especially in today's polarized online world.
It is a challenge, but it's one we can address by being more conscious of our own biases and actively seeking out diverse perspectives. It's about being willing to listen to those who disagree with us and engage in respectful dialogue, even when it's uncomfortable.
That makes a lot of sense. So circling back to this study, what are the key takeaways for our listeners? What can we learn from this research about how to make better decisions as part of a group?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that it's important to be aware of the potential downsides, like information cascades and the suppression of dissenting opinions.
And the research suggests that a little bit of disagreement can actually be a healthy sign that valuable information is being brought to the table.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between valuing individual perspectives, fostering healthy debate, and understanding that consensus doesn't always equal the best decision.
This research has definitely given us a lot to think about. Are you conforming too easily, or are you valuing independence at the expense of the long-term benefits of being part of a group?
It's a question we should all ask ourselves as we navigate the complex world of collective decision-making. We all want to be accepted and respected by our peers, and sometimes that can lead us to prioritize harmony over truth, even if it's subconsciously.
And as we discussed earlier, this isn't necessarily a sign of weakness or indecision. It's actually a rational response to wanting to maintain access to the long-term benefits of being part of a group.
Precisely. But the key takeaway here is to be aware of this dynamic and to find ways to mitigate the potential downsides of excessive conformity.
So what are some practical steps that we can take to make sure that we're not sacrificing accuracy for the sake of group cohesion?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to fostering a culture of open communication and respectful dissent, whether it's in the workplace, our social circles, or even in our online interactions.
So it's about encouraging healthy debate
Yeah.
and valuing those who are willing to challenge the status quo.
Exactly. And as leaders, it's about creating an environment where people feel safe to speak their minds without fear of reprisal or judgment. It's about actively seeking out diverse perspectives and recognizing that disagreement can be a valuable source of insight and innovation.
And I think it's also about being more mindful of our own biases and how they might be influencing our decisions. We need to be willing to question our assumptions and be open to the possibility that we might be wrong.
Absolutely. And remember, as we talked about earlier, sometimes those small minorities or lone dissenters are the ones who hold the most valuable information. It takes courage to stand up against the majority. So when someone does, it's worth paying attention to what they have to say.
It's like that old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Sometimes the most important voices are the ones that are the loudest or the most persistent, even if they're not the most popular.
Ex-
And on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of Coffeesodes. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of collective decision-making. We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking.